Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more ideas and opinions by Albert Einstein. Today we'll leave it a fairly short episode because we're only going to read two pieces, just about 4 pages, 3.5. But let's hop into this. The first piece we're going to read is Antisemitism and Academic Youth, published in Mein Weltbild, Amsterdam, Corrido Verlag, 1934. So long as we lived in the ghetto, our Jewish nationality involved us in material difficulties and sometimes physical danger, but no social or psychological problems. With emancipation, the position changed, particularly for those Jews who turned to the intellectual professions. In school and at the university, the young Jew is exposed to the influence of a society which has a definite national tinge, which he respects and admires, from which he receives his mental sustenance, and to which he feels himself to belong. While, on the other hand, the society treats him as one of an alien race with a certain contempt and hostility, driven by the suggestive influence of this psychological superiority rather than the utilitarian considerations. He turns his back on his people and his traditions, and chooses to consider himself as belonging entirely to the others. And while he tries in vain to conceal from himself and them the fact that the relation is not reciprocal, hence that pathetic creature, the baptized Jewish Gehemerat of yesterday and today. In most cases, it is not pushfulness and lack of character that have made him what he is, but as I have said, the suggestive power of an environment superior in numbers and influence. He knows, of course, that many admirable sons of the Jewish people have made important contributions to the glory of European civilization. But have they not all, with a few exceptions, done much of the same as he? In this case, as in many mental disorders, the cure lies in the clear knowledge of one's condition and its causes. We must be conscious of our alien race and draw the logical conclusions from it. It is no use trying to convince the others of our spiritual and intellectual equality to arguments addressed to their reason when the attitude of these others do not originate in their intellects at all. Rather, must we emancipate ourselves socially and supply our social needs, in the main them ourselves. We must have our own students' societies and adopt an attitude of courteous but consistent reserve to the Gentiles, and let us live after our own fashion there, and not ape dueling and drinking customs which are foreign to our nature. It is possible to be a civilized European and a good citizen, and at the same time a faithful Jew who loves his race and honors his fathers. If we remember this and act accordingly, the problem of anti Semitism insofar as it is of a social nature, is solved for us. So, yeah, Einstein talking about how the Jewish people are mistreated by many, even though they contribute largely, and how sometimes in academia it changes how those of a Jewish race and faith view themselves. And the other part we're going to read today, Our Debt to Zionism. Blurb reads, from an address on the occasion of the celebration of the Third Seder by the National Labor Committee for Palestine at the Commodore Hotel in New York City, April the 17th, 1938. Published in New Palestine, Washington, D.C., April the 28th, 1938. Rarely since the conquest of Jerusalem by titans of the Jewish community experienced a period of greater oppression that prevails at the present time. In some respects, indeed, our own time is even more troubled, for man's possibilities of immigration are more limited today than they were then. Yet we shall survive this period too, no matter how much sorrow, no matter how heavy a loss in life it may bring. A community like ours, which is a community purely by reason of tradition, can only be strengthened by pressure from without. For today, every Jew feels that to be a Jew means to bear a serious responsibility not only to his own community, but also toward humanity. To be a Jew, after all, means first of all to acknowledge and follow in practice those fundamentals in humanness laid down in the Bible, fundamentals without which no sound and happy community of men can exist. We meet today because of our concern for the development of Palestine. In this hour, one thing, above all, must be emphasized. Judaism owes a great deal of gratitude to Zionism. The Zionist movement has revived among Jews the sense of community. It has performed productive work, surpassing all the expectations anyone could entertain. This productive work in Palestine, to which self sacrificing Jews throughout the world have contributed, has saved a large number of our brethren from direst need. In particular, it has been possible to lead a not inconsiderable part of our youth toward a life of joyous and creative work. Now, the fateful disease of our time, exaggerated nationalism, borne up by blind hatred, has brought our work in Palestine to a most difficult stage. Fields cultivated by day must have armed protection by night, at night, against fanatical Arab outlaws. All economic life suffers from insecurity. The spirit of interest, when measured by American standards has made it has made its appearance. Um, the solidarity and confidence with which our brethren in Palestine face these difficulties deserve our admiration. Voluntary contributions by those still employed keep the unemployed above water. Spirits remain high, in the conviction that reason and calm will ultimately reassert themselves. Everyone knows that the riots are artificially fomented by those directly interested in embarrassing not only ourselves, but especially England. Everyone knows that banditry would cease if foreign subsidies were withdrawn. Our brethren in other countries, however, are in no way behind those in Palestine. They, too, will not lose heart, but will resolutely and firmly stand behind the common work. This goes without saying. But one more personal word on the question of petition. I should much rather see reasonable agreement with the Arabs on the basis of living together in peace than the creation of a Jewish state. Apart from physical consideration, my awareness of the essential nature of Judaism resists the idea of a Jewish state with borders, an army, and a measure of temporal power, no matter how modest. I am afraid of the inner damage Judaism will sustain, especially from the development of a narrow nationalism within our own ranks, against which we have already had to fight strongly, even without a Jewish state. We are no longer the Jews of the Maccabee period. A return to a nation in the political sense of the word would be equivalent to turning away from the spiritualization of our community, which we owe to the genius of our prophets. If external necessity should, after all, compel us to assume this burden, let us bear it with tact and patience. The more word on the present psychological attitude of the world at large, upon which our Jewish destiny also depends. Antisemitism has always been the cheapest means employed by selfish minorities for deceiving the people. A tyranny based on such deception and maintained by terror must inevitably perish from the poison it generates within itself. For the pressure of accumulated injustice strengthens those moral forces in man which lead to a liberation and purification of public life. May our community, through its suffering and its work, contribute toward the release of those liberating forces. So, yeah, Einstein talking about how important the spiritualism is in the aspect of bringing the Jewish people back together, of forming a community almost, even though they are spread out among Europe, even though those who still live in uh, Palestine, Palestine, Israel, and what's now Israel, or struggle with the pushback from Palestinians. So, but as always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.